Hello gorgeous girls, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Bella and over here we talk all things self-development, growing and becoming that girl. Today I'm going to be telling you 5 books that altered my brain chemistry, 5 books that changed me, that really helped me level up. And I have read a lot of self-help books. Those that know me, have been following me on Instagram for years, you know I'm a little bookworm. I've read a lot, but these are 5 that I feel really stood out, really just changed something in my brain. And 5 books that I feel like if you read them, you will also change. You will also see the benefits of reading that book, taking that information in and starting to apply it to your life. So let's get straight into the tea. None of these books are in order besides this first book that I'm going to start with. And number 1, the book that I literally think every single human in the world needs to read. I genuinely think that if everyone in the world read this book, the world would be such a better place. That's a big statement to make, but I believe it in my hearts of hearts, okay? And it's also a book that I don't hear a lot of people talk about. I don't feel like a lot of people have read this book or even know about this book, which is why even more so it's at number 1 for me. It's called The Road Less Traveled. I'm gonna put a little picture of the book somewhere around here. But I read this book when I was traveling around South America. This was like my first big trip. This trip, I feel actually was the start of a glow up, level up phase. So you know I said that this is kind of like glow up 3.0 stage. 3 was kind of a random, but also not so much random. But I do feel like there's been a couple before that, really significant times of my life where I know it was literally a reinvention. I felt like I was born again. I felt like I just leveled up and started living and doing life differently. And on this trip, so I was traveling around South America for like 2.5 months, literally right before COVID as well. So that's why it was even more life-changing. But on this trip, I was reading this book and it just seriously changed my life. Now, a few things about this book that you need to know. 1, it is not the easiest book to read, okay? Let me tell you, I think I went and had to restart it like 3 times. But guys, when you finally get past that bit, that kind of push, that resistance of you getting into that book, I promise you, it will be so worth it. Like, I promise you. I'm telling you now, it's not the easiest book to read. But think about life. Getting to the next stage of your life is not always the easiest thing to do, okay? It's not just gonna be comfy, come to you, nice, rolled up in a bow. No, sometimes you gotta put in that work. And that is how it is with this book, okay? You gotta put in the work to read it, to get, like I said, just past that boundary. And then once you do, all the gems just start flowing into you. Like, this is a book that at the time, whilst I was traveling, I started journaling again. So I had journaled a lot when I was a child. Like, I have so many journals, and I found one of my old journals before this trip from like 2007. And it just inspired me to start journaling again. I was like, oh, look at little me. Like, look at what I was doing, you know? These times I'm just talking about like school, friends, things like that. But I thought, let me start journaling again. And what a better time as well. Like, I'm going to be traveling South America. Let me just journal my time, my experience. And this really turned also into a reflection journal, because this book just, it made me reflect a lot. It didn't even make me feel like I need to reflect. It made me reflect a lot, to the point where I was taking quotes from the book, putting it in my journal, and then applying it to my life. You know, in school, when it's like point, evidence, explain, that's what I was doing with my journal with this book. Like, it just went so deep into so many different things that I haven't thought about. And now, so when was this? This is in 2020. We are now in 2024. 4 years later, I feel like I've grown and changed so much mentally. I actually feel like I'm due to read the book again. If there's any book you take from this list today, please, The Road Less Traveled is one you have to read at some point in your lifetime. Okay? Thanks. Book number 2 is Atomic Habits. So this is probably one that you've heard about, you've seen about. And this book truly, out of a lot of self-help books that I've read, this is one of the greatest, definitely. I think just the way it's laid out, the simple tasks they give you to start making things easier. Like, I can't tell you I remember the whole book because I have read it a few years ago now, but there are so many parts and points from this book that I implement into my life now, still today, and points that I even use when it comes to coaching my online clients. Things like the power of small change, trying to improve 1% every day instead of trying to change everything overnight. Focusing on your identity and aligning that with your habits. Like, your habits are your identity. So who do you want to become? What kind of habits does that person have? That is your identity. So your habits need to reflect that person who you want to become. How to make new habits easier, like how to make changing your behavior easier. Things like making it easy for yourself. Something I say to my clients all the time, making things obvious. Like, if you, for example, I don't know, want to start making healthy juices or healthy smoothies, but your blender or your juicer is packed away in the cupboard, baby, bring it out, put it on the kitchen side, put it right in front of your face, so it is so obvious that you see it every day, that it becomes easier for you to get to that habit. There are just so many gems. I'm not gonna tell you the whole book, but there are so many gems that, like I said, just real world application has just really, it just makes sense. It's a book that it just makes sense. Like, when you read it, you're like, oh, duh. This is the way things are meant to be done. Now, third book, this is a self-help book, but also brings in finance into it, which, if you watch my first video, you would have seen that finance is something that I'm personally focusing on the next year, and I definitely want to talk more and take you guys on this journey as well. But it was one of the first books I read that kind of had that finance look into it. I have always wanted to have my own business, and at this point, I think when I read this book, I was working at the gym as a self-employed personal trainer. But this book really taught me a great foundation when it comes to finances, when it comes to assets and liabilities. One decision that this book literally changed in my life. So I was a tomboy growing up. I love driving. I love cars. I was like, as soon as I get 17, I'm getting my license. I'm getting my car. I don't care. I was one of those girlies, and I did get my license as soon as I turned 17. But I was reading this book, and essentially it talks about assets and liabilities and how a lot of us think we have assets, but they're actually liabilities. And it made me completely change the way I saw having a car at that time for me. I was working in the city and I was working in the gym. So I was there long ass hours, guys, like most days over 12-hour days, right? So one, I wasn't able to park at work. There was no parking. There was no free parking. So I wouldn't have been able to park at work, which is where I literally was majority of my time. And then outside of that, me using my car wouldn't really be for anything that is making me money or that is adding to my life. So it made me see that at that time, having a car actually would have been more of a liability than an actual asset. Of course, as you go through life and things change, you having a car may actually be an asset for your life. If you can, for example, I don't know, drive for work, if it makes your journey easier, if it makes you be able to do certain things that you wasn't able to do before. But for me, like living in the city, I live in the city anyway, I'm like 30 minutes on the train from most places in London. So I didn't need the car, and like I said, it just really made me change my viewpoint. So this book, from a financial point of view and from a mindset point of view and from a business point of view, really made me change, see things differently, and it was a great read. So if you haven't read this one already, I know this one is also quite popular amongst the self-help books, but Rich Dad Poor Dad is definitely up there on my list. The next book is Chimp Paradox, okay? I friggin' love this book because one thing about me, and if you know me, you know this is true, one thing about me, and I truly see it as something I've been able to turn into a superpower, but my ability to control my emotions is pretty sick. Okay, I'm not gonna say it's perfect. Of course, there's still things that I could work on, but my ability to like be in a stressful situation and to still look at things logically, or to realize when maybe my emotions or my triggers are what's behind what I'm saying or what I'm feeling, as opposed to something that has actually happened or what someone has actually done, is pretty freaking good. And this book, I feel, teaches you that. It starts to teach you that emotional intelligence, because essentially the theory of the book is we've all got a little chimp on our shoulder, right? And that little chimp is basically like, see it as like your younger self. It's your younger self that maybe has trauma, has triggers, always wants to be heard, seen, react to things, etc. And it's about learning to when to tell that chimp to shush and when to deal with things logically with your brain, and when also to work with your chimp and heal your chimp, you know, because all of us have to heal our inner child, you know. Even if you feel like you've had a normal upbringing or a normal, I don't know, childhood, there's always things like anxieties, the way you deal with things, triggers, the way you see the world, the way you see people, situations that affect us. So being able to have that ability to, like I said, see what is actually real and see what comes from your past, your traumas, your triggers, etc., and then navigate through life that way is a really big skill. And I think I said this in one of my videos previously, but for me, I feel like emotional intelligence, emotional development is something that the whole of society is lacking. Like, I feel if we all had a bit more emotional maturity, intelligence, the world would be a bit more of a better place, definitely. So Chimp Paradox, definitely a book that I would put on your list. And especially if you feel like maybe you're someone that doesn't manage your emotions well, maybe you don't manage stress well, maybe you find like you're always reacting to things or maybe overreacting to things and you want to stop that, you want to change that, this is definitely a book that you want to read. The last book recommendation that I have for you lovelies today is actually another finance book, and it is specifically about investing. So before I started investing, there was 2 books that I read. The Intelligent Investor, which I definitely do love and do give props to, but I loved this book so much more, and I'll tell you why. So the book title is a little bit long, but it is Warren Buffett and the Guide to Interpreting Financial Statements. It's a little book, it's not a big book at all, and it is so simple, guys. It is so simple to understand. Like when I read this book, everything about stocks, investing just made so much sense to me. And don't get me wrong, like I said, Intelligent Investor is great, but because Intelligent Investor was written so long ago, like when you read the actual book part of it, it's for me anyway, I found it difficult to read and difficult to take in. They do have summaries at the end of every chapter, and to be honest, I think it got to a certain point in the book where I was just reading the summaries because I felt the actual chapters just, like I said, just too much and too fussy to take in and to actually digest. And then I read this book after and I was like, oh, I could have just read this book. Like it just, like I said, just really simply explains everything you need to know when it comes to investing, when it comes to reading financial statements, understanding if a stock is a good investment, something you should maybe hold, something you should maybe wait until you invest into, something maybe you should sell, etc. It really just breaks things down so easy. And as a girlies, I think we should be all upping our financial knowledge, getting into our investments and making sure that we are securing our future because we're living in a cost of living crisis, okay? So we got to make sure that our money is in check and our money is working for us, okay? Gone are the days where the girlies are just keeping their money in savings accounts. We want to be investing too. We want to be in the stock market as well. Okay, girl? So there we have it. My 5 books that I would recommend you read or at least put on your reading list if you are trying to grow, if you are trying to get better with your finances, your emotional development, if you're trying to better yourself, your situation, your mindset. These are the books that need to be on your reading list. So comment below if you have read any of these books, or I also want to know like any books that you have read that you would recommend or that you would recommend that I read too, because I am always trying to read. So I do want to hear from you guys as well. Let the girlies know. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, my honeys. And I will see you all again for another video soon. Bye.